lot of the time, like with a Korean game. Alright, so SKT are blue side again. I wonder if they will give up the... So last time KT was on blue, and KT took Xayah to force SKT to take Rakan, because second side has the threat of 1-2ing Xayah Rakan. So the priority picks for first pick here are going to be Xayah and Swain if neither gets banned, and then Azir and Talia are high priority in the first rotation if Swain does get picked by either side. So do they ban the Sejuani here like they have been? Because they've been trying to force a blank onto a second tier pick. Yep. So the only junglers that are left are Skarner, which can be countered by Morgana and by Thresh potentially, and is also just bad into Trundle Olaf. Those are banned at least. So they first picked the Azir. So this is going to be Xayah. This should be Xayah Rakan. Or they can Xayah Swain. This is the, yeah, SKT, this is actually a big gambit by SKT, because you can Xayah Rakan here for ultimate bot lane priority, or you can Xayah Swain. And then you force them to take the Rakan. This will be Xayah Swain, because they can still take Rakan later. This should be Swain. And it forces SKT, so you know what their bot lane pick is going to be. This should be Swain. Should be Swain, could be Rakan. And the only junglers that are left are Skarner for meta picks, and then maybe Kha'zix, Jarvan, or like B tier. Yeah, so this has to be Swain. And then they have to pick Rakan, because you can't give up that much priority on the bottom side of the map. So SKT have a great matchup for mid lane if that Swain ends up going mid lane. They have to have this thing. Bang has been pushed down on his pool in every game when they get to the second rotation, so they're early picking 80 carry here too, which is interesting. This means that KT can potentially get counter picks for both their solo lanes if they wanted, or they can save like a support pick for late to see like so that they can determine what their comp like wants to do later in the game, because support has a really high impact on what your composition does. Blind pick Camille. This forces certain things, like now you don't want to give them Gangplank because it's relatively safe into it, and then this keeps them from picking like a Gnar or something like that, so you're already saying too that the Swain is going mid. This is really interesting because neither team has picked a jungler, and the only good junglers in the meta are Olaf, Skarner, Sejuani, Trundle, and Zac. Like those, and 4 of them are banned already, and I assume Skarner has to get banned here, because SKT has to ban Skarner, otherwise KT just takes Skarner. That's not Camille jungle. They have to ban Skarner. 100% they have to ban Skarner. They give up Skarner. I like Camille jungle, but it's not going to be Camille jungle. They will ban Skarner. They have to ban Skarner. Ban Skarner. There's the Skarner ban. They have to. Okay. So then KT has the option. They can pick a jungler here, and it can either be a tank jungler to fill the role of like something that the other champions would do, or they can just pick their support. I think they're going to save their actually, they might save the jungle pick for last. I'm trying to think of like what fits like a similar role. Gragas. Gragas is really bad in solo queue. So, wow. I wouldn't have expected Gragas. Well, what's left? Kha'Zix is the only other competitive jungler that really gets picked. But Kha'Zix is really bad into their team. You could go... I honestly think Warwick is competitively viable if they wanted to pick Warwick. I don't know if they've put time into it. Poppy as like a safe pick into Camille while they scale up Azir and Ezreal damage. There's not a good jungler left. They might go Kha'Zix, because Kha'Zix is the last high priority jungle pick, like relatively. But Kha'Zix gets fucked by Camille later in the game. Kha'Zix gets fucked by Swain. Kha'Zix gets fucked by Gragas, and Kha'Zix has a hard time into Xayah. Oh my god. I can't... SKT got fucked with this draft. Because they had to ban Skarner after the way like the early picks were, turned out. And so they ended up with a jungler that does literally nothing for their composition. And what's up, Photon? And then Shen on top of it. This Kha'Zix is actually worthless. It's actually impossible for this Kha'Zix to be useful. Oh my god. Like, Gragas has utility, right? He's just going to fill the role of Sejuani. He's just going to fill the role of Zac. He's just going to... He's just going to like fit into like the composition just like any normal jungler would. And you can't play Kha'Zix into Swain. You can't play Kha'Zix into Swain. They have this Shen. They have Camille who can fight him later and lock him down. Zaya's relatively safe into Kha'Zix. This Kha'Zix is worthless. I actually think they should have picked like a Warwick or something here. Honestly. I know Warwick's not a competitive staple, but Warwick is finding competitive play. SKT got fucked in draft. SKT got fucked. Zaya's good into Ezreal. Swain's gonna have a hard time in mid lane. Camille does fine up top. Yeah, you could pick something like a Mumu. You could plop in any tank and play the game like normal, basically, which is what KT did, right? They just took Gragas. Gragas is a bad pick, but they're like, we're just gonna fucking slap in Gragas, whatever. We'll just take Gragas because he's gonna fill the same role of a jungler that we want. Whereas SKT didn't want to slot in like a C tier jungler, so instead they took like an A tier jungler, not S tier, but like an A tier jungler. But it doesn't fit their comp at all. It doesn't fit their comp at all. This Kha'Zix is gonna be worthless the entire game. I'm so tilted. I am so tilted by these SKT drafts. They should have had Caitlyn in game 2 to pressure bot side and give them a lane to play off of. In game 3, they could pick literally anything but Renekton and the game probably would have been better. They skip these fucking things. They do have Azir. You could Nunu. You could Nunu into a tank jungler. That's fine. True. Kha'Zix does want the enemy team to be relatively squishy and to be lower CC, which just isn't like the competitive meta at the moment, so... This Kha'Zix needs to pop the fuck off early if they're going to do anything of any relevance. They have kill pressure on this Camille up top because they can dive the Camille on a big wave that crashes topside, so that's something they could look for. Gragas doesn't have the healthiest clear, so maybe they can do something where they let the wave push in, and then you pressure her when she comes up for the wave. You build up 2.5 waves or so, and then when 2.5 waves build up, you get the vision control and you dive her on the waves, because they should have the threat for that as long as she's at like 75%. Those two champions should be able to do that with relatively low counterplay for Camille. And it's interesting that KT are so willing to take the Swain because the past few games they've proven that they can play against Swain really easily. So since they've proven that they can play against Swain really easily, it's interesting that they also put the same kind of priority on it. He might just have to give this up. I mean, he can look for like a smite contest. Because Kha'Zix is so much stronger in this 1v1 early. This is exactly what Kha'Zix wants. Kha'Zix wants the opportunity to be able to do damage to the Gragas and look for like a fight early. Try to force him off of something. Try to get something for an advantage early. Faker with that interesting juke. He's nuts. Run it back. The more time Kha'Zix spends here, though, without getting it is really bad. Mata on the early roam. Mata actually just secured score his red buff. Mata came from bot lane to make sure that Score gets his red buff. That is literally the purpose of this. He's Deft is losing a few CS in bot lane and getting zoned off of even EXP because Mata wanted to make sure that Gragas gets ahead early against this Kha'Zix, and if Gragas gets ahead early against this Kha'Zix will never be useful. It will not get better. He cannot farm his way into relevance or anything like that. It'll only get worse. So he spent all that time there to get literally nothing from it, while Gragas got to full clear, and then his team supported him so that he could get the buff anyway. So KT were really good there playing around the pick. Oh, that, what the fuck? Score? UCal, you're nuts. Fucking inted for that shit. He's dead. What the fuck? They should not lose this bot lane. They actually just shouldn't lose this bot lane. Interesting. Interesting. Score did not eat where the tug from Swain would come from. He eat to where the guy was. Very interesting. Because that should have just been like a clean kill on Faker, but not how it turned out. And bot lane, they should never die down there. Like, granted, you're a little bit down in EXP and like gold because you got zoned. Like, they were like a level down, but that shouldn't be like a death. Photon, when this game is over, do you want to do you have like a game that I can go over, or does anybody have a game that I can go over? Preferably, I want to do like a subs game, so. Or you could start one up and I can add you on League Client and spectate it and talk over it. My man died to fucking Kha'zix. This is one of the greatest players in the world. Just fucking fought the Kha'zix and died. He's going back. These Kha'zix are fucked. This is what peak performance looks like. Score being ahead in CS and EXP against Kha'zix early is actually a worrying trend. They can get a flash out of Poppy here. That was good. Ooh. This Kha'zix right here. NA has crazy priority on this Kha'zix. And we lose to this kind of Kha'zix. This Kha'zix. This Kha'zix that wastes a minute and a half early in the game and then dies to Kha'zix. This is what we can't handle in the Western Hemisphere. We figure out the Kha'zix and we forget about the champion. Their bot lane is hella priority. Score actually shouldn't still be on top side. There's actually no reason for them to necessarily give this up because they can contest it, because Score is actually still more powerful than Kha'zix was. So they don't need to necessarily lose this dragon. They gave up a dragon at another point too. They'll get a blue buff out of it, but this isn't something that they needed to give up. How do you chance a Tabula? Divine, not Divine, I chance a simple robe. Easy. Easy. Run at him. So what they should look for, SKT, to try to get an advantage, is to try to make a play off mid lane, because Faker can relatively easily push back or set up a kill onto Swain, and Swain doesn't have flash. So while Blank has like the potential to come into the lane and invis, then this is their opportunity to try to get something back. So that's the play that they should try to make. And Score should hover around mid to prevent that. Dude, don't be toxic. This Kha'zix is gonna pop off, dude. Don't be toxic. Look, dude, no game is over at Champion Select. You can always end. I've seen some shit. I've seen some games in North America where I've seen some games in North America where you win draft across the board, and then you just lose in every lane. You just get a winning lane matchup in every lane, you get the better jungle pick, and then you just lose in every lane. Have you seen Faker? He's playing like a fucking shit tier mid laner out of NA. I'm unimpressed, dude. I'm unimpressed. Blank looks like Meteos. I love League of Legends. Dude, he's about to destroy mid lane with his Kha'zix. Swain has his flashbacks, and now he'll probably be able to survive anything that happened. So they missed their window. Because Kha'zix actually has like a really reliable, even though they have the 2 pinks there, you can invis straight through those brush onto the Swain. They should be able to set that kill up. They would have to know where score is, but they had 2 opportunities where score was recalled, where they should have been able to get that for relatively low investment. They still have the threat to dive Camille too, because Poppy is at one of her strongest points, like level 7 and 9. Her Q will actually do a very significant amount of damage, like up to like 40% of Camille's health if she has to take both hits. So when she's on like the turret, if she were to get like flash W to make sure she can't E out of it herself. So like this play should have happened earlier. This should have happened earlier. Now it's not safe. This needs to happen a minute ago. Can he even kill him? Okay, he got it. This should have happened a minute ago, when he didn't have flash. When they didn't have flash, and when they have control of top side, so they have a safe side, so they know where score can potentially be. A play basically going even at this point is super bad for SKT. He needed to queue up his ultimate too, because he got CC'd out of it. You can queue up your ultimate out of E, so he should have been able to dash in, and then before he gets CC'd there, start his ultimate to push him back into the turret to stop a lot of the damage that would have came through, and he might have lived out on the back end of it without being stuck there in Swain. So Faker Blank should have been able to do that, because he would still have flash after too. He'd be able to push the guy with the buffered R, and then after the buffered R, he can flash down away from both. And Score would have to commit flash if he wanted to kill him, and then the rest of the play wouldn't happen. I want to see Runic Echoes Gragas with the live patch, the patch after the one they're playing on. Because I think Runic Echoes Gragas will actually be played in competitive play, because he can go tank after that relatively reliably, and he fills a very similar role to like what some of the tanks and what people want out of a jungler right now, where you're like useful in the mid game. So I think Runic Echoes Gragas will see play on the live patch. It's still really bad in solo queue, but people love Gragas for competitive play. He is so reliable, and the amount of disruption that he has in a fight is insane. Damn, I was hoping Rakan would steal that fucking frog. Get the hot frog. Literally parked here trying to make this mid lane play. I appreciate it. He's fucking gone. How do I feel about Ezreal? Ezreal is a really safe pick, and with the way that Korea plays, he's broken. He's a broken pick in Korea. I don't think he's broken overall. In Korea, he is very successful, because Korea plays a slower game, and they aren't normally able to punish Ezreal as much as he could be punished. When you play a slower game, I think Ezreal is very effective. And there's very few things I think that you can pick safely into things like Swain, Camille, like that can like meaningfully like not be as pressured. Like you could pick Varus into this team and you would do tons of damage, but Varus would be at a very high risk of just being ran over by like Camille Shen for basically free. Run it back. Why weren't they doing this earlier? These plays were free before. Teams generally pick Ezreal for a couple of reasons, where you want a self-sufficient AD carry independent of your composition. So your AD carry isn't important to your composition when you pick Ezreal. Ezreal is almost never important to your composition when you pick Ezreal. You pick Ezreal because he is safe and you can let your support roam, and because Ezreal can take care of himself in a fight and doesn't necessarily need like the same front line that like somebody else might need. So like Varus or like Kog'Maw or any like the auto attack AD carries want very defined lines in a team fight of like where they can stand to like do damage safely, whereas Ezreal doesn't need that line to be created for him to be safe. So, like when I was with CLG, we would pick Ezreal when he wasn't just absolutely broken and just a priority pick. We would pick Ezreal when we just wanted something safe for bot lane, and it wasn't a priority to have priority in bot lane. So you pick Ezreal when you don't want priority, or when you're going to lose priority anyway. If you're going to lose priority anyway, then there's no harm in picking Ezreal because you probably weren't going to get priority anyway, right? So like if they have like Karma Zaya or like Caitlyn or who else is crazy wave clear, or if they have like a Tristana and you're not like somebody that can outright kill her, then you can just pick Ezreal. And he's going to be super safe, and he's going to have the ability to... Oh, he's getting hella deep. Can he kill him? Not with that ult. Yeah, he's fine. But Ezreal is just a safe pick when you don't need something specific from your AD carry. If you need extremely high DPS from your AD carry because you draft a front to back fighting composition where you have a huge front line, then you can pick Ezreal. If you don't need engage from somebody like Varus or Ashe, then you can do that. He net flashes waiting on his ECD. He definitely has a interesting power curve because his Trinity Force spike is really good on one item. He's actually relatively potent, but he's still like a relatively bad sieger because he has low range. And then he doesn't have the 2 or 3 item power spikes or the DPS that like other champions do. Like his 2 and 3 item power spikes are fine, but he doesn't scale up as hard, and it's not as multiplicative as like That's actually super silly. All the plays that Blank is trying to make should have literally happened 10 minutes ago. They did all the mid lane plays like a few minutes late when like Swain like is much harder to kill. He has more ranks in his Q, so he can trade back better damage. He has the second rank of his ultimate. He has his flash up when they go multiple times, and then they go for this top lane dive, and they do the top lane dive at a point where like Camille's relatively strong at this point. She has like 2 skills maxed, and she has like the durability to survive something like that a lot easier now. Should have happened a lot earlier. Ezreal still is like one of the higher DPS AD carries mid-game because he gets damage that other AD carries don't a lot of the times, because another AD carry might get zoned out of the fight by like let's say there's somebody like Alistar or Rakan who if you get within like 700 range of, you can just get comboed and die. So Ezreal can get damage in from outside of that operable range really safely. So he can get damage off that other champions can't, and that's where like a lot of his power comes from. If he ran at a different angle, he wouldn't have died that either. So into KT's comp, I think Ezreal can be fine, especially because they have damage elsewhere. They would have damage via Kha'Zix, like at least like some for like frontline, but that's like scary because trying to go through frontline as Kha'Zix, I actually just think it's a terrible pick. They should have picked any fucking random generic tank. But they have a Zir who has like incredible sustained damage to offset like the fact that Ezreal doesn't necessarily have the highest like raw auto attack damage. Not that his overall damage is bad, and he finds a lot of damage that other AD carries can't. In this game too, I might have liked it if he went Gauntlet, because Swain is really kiteable with Gauntlet. Gragas, if you can Q him before he can get in range to like E-flash you, is kiteable with Gauntlet. Camille, not as much, but they just have a large amount of like threat that he could slow down or stop with Gauntlet. I think if you pick Ezreal for like for Gauntlet pick potential and to slow how their composition wants to operate, then Ezreal has some merit too. He has like a unique utility in that way, because nobody else can apply Gauntlet from like 1200 range like he can, as reliably as he can. Ashe would be the closest thing with like volley, but she's not nearly as safe at doing it either. And Ezreal, when he gets enough items, can actually like pseudo engage when he has Gauntlet. Because if he lands a Q on you and he gets to chase you with Qs, like you can get ran down while you can't really retaliate because he'll still have his E. Kha'zix still needs a Duskblade in this game to be able to like threaten when he comes in like initially, because even if you don't have, ooh, that's close. Even when you don't have necessarily like isolation or like the easiest way to access backline, you can still do a pretty meaningful amount of damage to frontline, like just like with your first auto Q and then like disengaging from there. So you either like R in or you got from a brush and then you R back out, or you leap out after the fact, and you can do an okay amount of damage if they haven't built like a significant amount of armor. So like against like Camille, he has like pretty potent damage to like fight back against. Ooh. I find it interesting too that Swain gets forced into building Abyssal Mask against single magic damage team comps just because of how hard it is for him to lane against Azir. And if they could have slowed down his build path where he wouldn't have Azanias yet by putting more pressure in mid lane, then there's potential that they would be able to like force fights right now really easily because the Swain wouldn't be a high impact. When they first announced the changes to Sightstone, and they hadn't announced like Spell Thief changes, I thought like every AP jungler would go crazy up in value because of Sightstone value. Relic Shield, people played around with before, but I think you lose too much early power. Swain is busted. I think you lose too much early power in exchange for it, but it might have some merit anyway. I think you lose too much, but interesting teleport. They don't want to chance the Baron because Ezreal can poke at it really safely. Because people were previously taking Spell Thieves on junglers, and then they announced the Sightstone changes, and I thought that just meant that AP junglers would be really good, because Spell Thieves would be just what they take. But they also included in that patch that Spell Thieves was nerfed for junglers, so... The only problem is, you're still going to finish it relatively late, and by the time that you finish it, Lee Sin is not going to be the most relevant anymore anyway. Especially on someone like Lee, you want to have like the damage to be able to like force a play to work rather than investing into a Sightstone early necessarily, because then that opens up more plays that you can do. Ooh, my man just got destroyed. That Poppy did like half his health. This is spicy. This is exactly what SKT does need. They have a pretty fast Baron team because Kha'zix, Azir, and Ezreal's not bad on it, but Kha'zix, Azir basically are really fast for it. Camille's here now. SKT aren't super tanky, so they are going to take a lot of damage from this. Swain. Oh, Swain got pushed away. Okay, that's good. If Swain didn't get pushed away here, then SKT just would have got absolutely destroyed. So SKT are falling into the trap that KT did in the first game. In the first game, KT fought into Swain's ultimate twice, and they got absolutely destroyed. In the 2 games following, they did their absolute damnedest to stay the fuck away from Swain and never interact with him. If he ults, they hard disengaged and just walked away from the fight and gave up whatever it was. And then when his ultimate was down, they looked for fights, and they tried to literally just be on the opposite side anytime that they could. Deft was still dead, and they could get poked really heavily by Azir and Ezreal, so it's also risky for them, because Deft was just on the way back. Because they were winning that fight without Deft. If Deft hadn't died before the play, then it would literally be a free Baron, but they don't have Deft quite there yet. And Azir, Ezreal actually have a lot of threat. Ezreal was at like 60%. Because he eat over the wall after taking like one big hit from Swain. At a healthy enough range to safely poke. Azir was pretty low. I'm surprised that Score built Knight's Vow. I wonder if Gragas doesn't have high enough base health to get like Warmogs by like level 13. Like most champions get 12 to 14, somewhere in that range, if you get it with a Cinderhulk nowadays. So I wonder if Gragas is on the lower end, and that's why. Because normally you just go Warmog second. Oh my god, Blanks got fucked. My man. Camille can probably win a 1v1 against Poppy at this stage in the game too. It would take a long time, but she should be able to win one. This is a slow Baron, because they're not committing everything to it. They're trying to save like as much as possible for the turn. KT is doing this Baron with the intention of turning. Until that was at like 3k, they had every intention of turning off the Baron and fighting. You could tell because they weren't using literally any spells. Even Deft wasn't like using his spells for like maximum damage, because Kazai actually does a ton of damage with her pull to a Baron. The TP? Yep. Swain's in the back line with his ult up. Can't stick on their back line for now, but he still has so much zoning potential. Blank literally can't play. And Thal got zoned off too. And this is because when Swain's like sitting in a spot like that, like your team literally can't do anything about it. Like you can't like walk into him for it. You can't walk through him. Both your carries are on that side. So anybody else that isn't on that side is just zoned off completely, because you don't want to give him more ability to dive through more healing and just free damage on the back end. This game they have relatively better siege than they have in the past, just because they have a high amount of safety with Gragas and Shen. So even though they still have Xayah, who's relatively low range, and Swain, who has like low range, they have a safer siege, purely because Gragas has such reliable disengage. He built a Knight's Vow, and you have Shen, who has protection via his W and his ultimate. Get it, Wolf. It's not even in range, dude. So I think this set is interesting because KT plays around Swain really well in the games that they give up Swain, except for the first one. Then they pivot. Like they had a good idea going into Swain in the first one, and then they mis-executed. And then in the second and third game, they do play around Swain properly, and then they take the Swain, and SKT is not showing the same respect to Swain. From the playoff games. There was not a way for us to look at playoff games, even for, unless we recorded them. Like a way to get an actual file for it. Even when I was working, that was an issue because I wanted to do things like that. But that's not publicly available. Why did he flash up? Why did he flash up? He's nuts. This poor Kha'zix. He slowed them. He's useful. Does he not have Zanya's? It's not up yet? They can't chase too far. He almost one-shot Wolf. This takes way too long. They're not going to get the inhib now. Yeah, they're going to get chased off. They might TP. They're considering a TP. They're not going to do it. Crystal was just coming back, and they were spam pinging the Warden bot lane. They were considering just collapsing super hard. Honestly, I feel like that's a play that you should be making too. When you're 10k down almost, that's the kind of play that you have to try. Because you're just going to bleed out at this point. You lost one inhibitor. The other inhibitor is open, ready to be taken. Half your champions can't really operate in the safe range of the Swain in this game, and you haven't proven that you could pull them around the map, and you don't have the advantage to pull them around the map to make Swain useless. So you should be looking for plays like that. You should be TPing behind them in bot lane so that you can try to collapse on them and try to get back something. Because if they get that kill, then they probably get both mid and bot turret, and then if they get a couple kills there, then feasibly, then the gold advantage is 4 or 5k instead of 8k, which could be massive. Getting back some of that structure gold would be is a really easy way for them to get back into the game, but they would need an advantage to do it. It's yeah, you're behind, it might not work out perfectly, you might not get kills out of it, but realistically, you're not gonna get a 50-50. So you should take the fucking 40-60 or whatever it is, because they would have had 4 people collapsing on 3. That's probably the best they're going to get. Too much hesitation. What's up, Justin? So top lane will auto push. They can leave Camille bot, and then Camille has the threat to come in from the side. She didn't Q. If she Q'd... Oh, he just hit the cone the wrong direction? Hello, Smeb? 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 Okay. Well, that slows the game down. Now KT has to chill until basically their until basically SKT's inhibitor will come back up. Blank might just die. If he got taunted there, he actually just would have died outright. But KT doesn't have perfect vision control to know who all could be there, even if they went on blank. Justin, you want to sub and show me some really high-level Malzahar gameplay that I can go over? Is he dead? He's dead. He's gone. He's gone. Faker up way too far in the side lane when they have TP threat. Swain. Swain. That should be game. He's just chilling. He's checked out. So KT, really good at playing around Swain by picking things like Talia and Azir, and then they use that priority to get around the map and control vision and make sure that Swain can't really move out of place. And they abuse their range in lane to not have to interact with the Swain in a meaningful way. In this game, SKT was on a timer where they needed to pressure topside because Poppy Kha'zix has dive threat on Camille as early as level 3, and Kha'zix Azir has really easy setup onto Swain, especially with all the brushes around mid that Kha'zix can go through to set up the kill. They did all these things, but they did them like late, and then since they did them so late, they weren't able to capitalize the way that they should have been.